Koji. This one isn't about sake. Well, it is about sake. If it's about koji, it's entirely about sake. Because without koji, you have no sake. You don't have sake, you don't have miso, you don't have soy sauce. You don't have the foundation of everything that makes the Japanese cuisine that the world adores. It's gone. It is erased without koji. The nice thing is that that vocabulary, that word is starting to slowly work its way into the more global lexicon. Little by little, it's still got a long ways to go, but it's starting to get there. And a big part of it is due to the types of work, like our next guests that we have joining us. And so we're really, really lucky to be joined this time. I'm super excited to have this combination together of guests. Mr. Jeremy Umansky, who is the chef and owner of Larder in Cleveland, Ohio, and also the co-author of Koji Alchemy, an incredible book that's communicating the potential for the mysterious power of koji, what it can do, and what's really, really possible out there, and really, really defining it. And he's joined by Mr. Koichi Higuchi, who is the director of Higuchi Matsunosuke Shoten, which are one of the very small handful of producers of koji here in Japan. And so to get these two gentlemen together is a huge treat. And so I want to welcome them into the studio now, and we're going to explore the world of koji. Gentlemen, are you with us?
Hello.
Good evening, good morning.
Good morning.
There we are, everybody. So amazing to have you both in the studio. I'm so excited to be able to have you here. We can't run around the world and get together, but it kind of puts a smile on my face every time we say go and these faces pop up and we're all in the same place. This is good. I like this.
We're very, very happy to be here. Very excited.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. I introduced you both briefly just a moment ago, so that we'll kind of have an idea as to who we've got in the studio today, and we'll get into that a little bit more. I'm really excited to share your work, both of yours with Koji, because they're so intrinsically tied, but on very different ends of the spectrum. And I'm so excited to be able to share both of those today. But I'm just curious, the type of work, say, for example, Jeremy, that you're doing, and Higuchi-san, being based in Japan in this very traditional industry, up until very recently, they were very separate worlds for a lot of people. And I'm just sort of curious, how did the two of you get connected? Where did this relationship come from? Higuchi-san, how did you and Jeremy get together?
Actually, he is my customer.
Okay.
I'm joking. So from 2016, so we have been, from 2016, we have been receiving from many inquiries from the international customers. And most of them, they talk about Mr. Jeremy Umansky. In 2016, I didn't know about him, but most of customers say his TED presentation was so impressive. So most of them are getting interested in using koji for their cuisines. And they are very talented chefs. So we have never received a purchase order from the talented chefs till 2016. And then I tried to watch his presentation. So at the time I was shocked. So the way of thinking for koji, my way of thinking is completely changed. And I think at the same time, Jeremy Umansky contacted me directly for purchasing our koji starter. Now our conversation is started from 2016, and we shared many ideas. And actually last year I visited his place in Cleveland, and he served me many fantastic foods like his charcuteries and sandwiches, pastrami, and fried chickens. everything has koji cured food.
Yeah.
It was impressive. So
Excellent, excellent. And then, so then, Jeremy, where did this affinity for koji come from? Of all the tools you have to play with out there in the world, what was sort of the impetus for this route of exploration?
You know, for me individually, prior to my working with Koji, I was already doing a lot of charcuterie making, and I was a vinegar maker. So to make vinegar, I had to make alcohol and was very familiar with those processes. And I'm also a wild mushroom expert. So I do a lot of work with mushrooms in the forest and then also helping farmers with them, using them in restaurants. And when I was introduced to Koji, at that point, I thought I knew all there was to know. And there was so little that I actually knew. I was asked to make a miso. And when I went to go make the miso, I came across Koji. And from there, things just snowballed with me. Being someone who works very closely with other types of mushrooms, other types of fungi, I was able to kind of make a connect with, oh, Koji isn't too much different from some of these other ones that we use in food, some of the ones that we use in charcuterie and cheese making. Why isn't it being used there? And that started me just exploring everything and anything that I could do with it. And thankfully, Koichi and I had a mutual acquaintance, Kiko Katayama, who is in New York City here, has a great show called Japan Eats. And I've been a guest on her show a few times, and she said, you and Koichi are gonna be good friends. And you have to work together and you have to buy his Koji spores. So if Akiko said it, that's exactly what I did.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So, right, I guess, you know, when you put it in those terms, you know, if you look at it as a fungi, it's not, it feels foreign, but it's not entirely removed from, you know, things that are a little bit closer to home and things that we're, you know, a little bit more familiar with, which means that, you know, it should be accessible. It's a tool. It should be a resource that we have. But, you know, this Koji stuff, this Koji business, you know, people hear about it, or they hear this word, but it's hard to kind of, even though it is, you know, technically a fungi, it's hard for people to kind of wrap their minds around, you know, what that is and what that means in this term of something they're not used to seeing. Higuchi-san, would you mind kind of explaining a little bit about exactly what it is that you do? I mean, what does it mean to supply producers, in this case, well, in Jeremy's case, chefs, but what does it mean to supply them with Koji?
So I'd like to explain about my business.
Please do, yeah.
Yeah, I'm working as the director of Higuchi Machinosuke Shoten. Our company is founded in 1855. So our company is running for 165 years. So far, it's a very traditional company. So we are supplying Koji spore for sake brewers, miso and soy sauce manufacturers, and shochu distillers, and also mirin and mazake producers. So Koji is fermented rice or fermented barley. So we are manufacturing a deeply fermented rice and a deeply fermented barley. And we harvest only spore from them. And we are dealing with 4 kinds of species of Aspergillus: Aspergillus oryzae, Aspergillus soya, Aspergillus lutruensis. 3 kinds of species. And mostly we are manufacturing Aspergillus oryzae. And Aspergillus lutruensis is very interesting spore. And this is exclusively used for shochu distillers. But like Jeremy-san and the talented chefs are interested in using Aspergillus lutruensis because it can expose a rich citric acid. So in general, Koji has a sweet taste and it has umami. But the citric acid lutruensis Koji has very sour. And so our business field is only for Japanese traditional food manufacturers, but recently it's getting changed. I will talk about that later.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you have some visuals or something to kind of show our, that maybe our listeners or our viewers could kind of see what it is we're
Yes.
talking about?
Yes, I do have some photos. Can I share the screens?
Yep. Let's see.
Just a moment, please.
Yep, no problem.
Right. So this is our Koji starter. So we have two types of product, granule type and the powder type. Of course, we have various kinds of Koji starter for each purposes, but for sake brewers, for domestic sake brewers, we are supplying both granular type and powder type. And I'm showing the granule type Koji starter for sake and shochu. And left one, this one is Aspergillus rhizae, a very typical Aspergillus rhizae Koji starter. And this one is white mutation of Aspergillus rhizae. And mainly this is for white miso and amazake and shio koji, salted koji. And this is Aspergillus lutuensis. And this is original strain for shochu. And this is white mutation, but actual color is deep brown. And this is for barley shochu. So, and this is, I show the granule type Koji starter. So we harvest just a spore and we add extender. This is most of the case potato starch. We mix that, finally we harvest we get the powder type Koji starter. We are selling powder type and granular type. That's it.
Excellent. Right, and so that's, I mean, that's super concentrated, right? So I mean, in order to use that, you don't need a whole lot.
So our Koji starter, for example, our Koji starter for miso has 30 grams per bag, and one bag Koji starter is for 200 kilo raw material.
Yeah.
So our Koji starter is not so expensive.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when you think about it, yeah, what you're able to do with one little packet, that's absolutely,
for absolutely. Customer, one bag purchase is enough for their purpose. Yeah. Most of the case.
I'm sort of, this is sort of an aside, but has that price for koji, has that gone up or down in recent years, or is that something that's been stable or fixed?
Very stable. But a few years ago, we make the product price less little, very little. So we are supplying very stable quality and price both. Yeah,
yeah. There's a lot I would like to ask about that actually, get in there, but maybe we'll come back to that a little bit toward the end, because I want to kind of get into then Jeremy's role. Then you take, you've got this powdered form of koji as a resource. How do you then, in your position as a chef, with a restaurant serving customers, your goal is to make delicious things, I imagine, that, bring joy to people and, that want them to, they can have a place to come and enjoy, great food in their community. How do you then interpret the role of koji in what you're doing? And then sort of how does it manifest itself in your work?
Yeah, so I think what's really interesting too to kind of get into, because it segues into that, is the type of restaurant I have. We are very focused on buying all our ingredients directly from farmers, which also makes our food very seasonal. So for example, even with our pickles, in the Jewish delicatessen, they have something called a kosher dill pickle. And most of the time that's a cucumber pickle. But here we have a very short growing season. So we only get fresh cucumbers for maybe 2 months in the summer. And then after that, I make the same pickle, but I use green tomatoes. And then in the winter, I use carrots. So we are this type of restaurant where we're very focused. And not a lot of restaurants in America are focused this way. A lot of people get industrially sourced food. So when we approach using koji, we approach it with the same sourcing guidelines that we do for a carrot or for a steak. And being able to connect with Koichi and see it's a small family business doing one thing incredibly well. They've been around for a long time. It really matched for us in that sense. So it's made us very happy to be able to support him and his family and his company, and to be customers of theirs. It's wonderful. So for us to, you know, getting to the core of your question, the Koji already makes everything more delicious. It makes things taste the most delicious version of what they already are. So if you eat a steak that has had Koji applied to it in some way or shape or form, whether it's soy sauce or you grew the mold on the meat, it is going to taste like the best type of steak you've ever had. That is just what Koji inherently does, and how its enzymes work, and how we interpret that on our taste buds. So getting people to enjoy delicious things made from Koji is not the hard part, because Koji does all the hard work for us.
It's inherently, it's in there.
Exactly. It is there. That's Koji's job. That's how it evolved, and that's what it wants to do. The hard part is getting people to not be afraid of the word mold, which Koji is a mold. So sometimes for us, we don't put those words on our menu. We'll say Koji, but we don't say mold. We'll say it's a fungus that grows and does certain things, and we educate people that way. And once people are comfortable and understand it a bit, even if it's the smallest bit they understand, then we can use the word mold and go from there and that sort of thing. But generally, we let the foods talk for themselves. We let people eat our fried chicken sandwich, which the bread has Koji in it. The chicken is bathed in Koji before it's cooked. The pickles on there, they have Koji in them, so does the sauce. And then we can say to them, oh, it was in everything on there that you really enjoyed. And then people are very understanding, and then they're intrigued. They want to eat more foods that have Koji in it.
Yeah. By the way, that was permeating every ounce of your experience there, right? Do you have something you could share? I think I've clearly, you know, a lot of people have been following your work very closely. People who have your book have an idea, but I think maybe some of our listeners maybe aren't necessarily familiar with. They're hearing the words that you're saying, but exactly what form that takes. Do you have some you could kind of show us to kind of give our viewers an idea as to what that means, and sort of how it manifests itself?
I'd love to. And hopefully some of these things will be eye-opening for some people.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I'll start here. And so this is a dessert we made with Koji. And if you look at the bar that's in there, that's stuck in this is, first it's an ice cream on the bottom that was made with a miso made from chocolate, from cacao beans. And then we have some crushed Koji on there. And then the grains in the bar there, it's kind of like a Rice Krispie treat, which is an American marshmallow and puffed rice snack. Well, this is puffed rice and barley Koji. So we grew the mold on them, then we puffed them up and coated them with sugar and wrapped it all with marshmallow. So these are some of the things that we're doing. Here are some of the vegetable-based charcuterie that we make. So these are a mixture of beets and carrots. We cook them in the smoker. We season them with salt and spices, just like you would for the making of other charcuterie. We then grow the Koji on the outside, and then we dry it. And you slice this thin, just like you would prosciutto or bresaola or these other types of European cured meats, but this is vegetable-based. And we can't really do this without Koji. Here's the inside of some of the beets and what they look like. And the texture becomes almost very meat-like a beef carpaccio, or some people even say like lox, like a cured fish, is what the texture of the vegetable turns into. There's another picture. There's some daikon in this picture also. This is something we found super interesting. This in the next, I think, couple pictures. So this looks like tempeh, but this is not. This is the Hashimoto variety from Koichi-san that we grew on black beans. And it forms such a dense mat that we can slice it and cut steaks and sear them. And we can serve this to people. Here's another, this was an early test. with some white beans. And you can see in the previous picture, we get a much thicker mat. And then this is some of that has been aged with salt. This was 2 years old. So this is very similar to the Chinese duchi. The dried,
that's beautiful.
I believe is it hamanato in Japanese?
Yeah,
I think
that's a super sweet, like, snack.
Yeah. So, and then we use these in cooking. We do other things too. So this is some Maitake mushroom that we grew koji on. We grow it flat first, and then about one day in, about 24 hours in, the koji matures at about 36 to 40 hours, typically, depending on what we're doing. We roll this up like a sausage, and it's made just of koji and mushrooms. And this is something that we can dry and slice thin, and people eat like charcuterie, or we can cook this up and make a mushroom burger for people. Here's another example that we did recently, and this is the Maitake mushroom and squash and apples all together. We're into fall here, and these are some of the ingredients that we've been working with. So, and this is all held together with koji, and it cooks up absolutely delicious. And then we'll go into some of the meats. This is a venison charcuterie. So this is meat that's been salted. We grow the koji on it, and then we dry it. This is an example of what we use, one of the ways we use black koji. So this is Aspergillus luchiensis, and this is the black variety. This is a blood sausage, which they make in Spain, they make in England, they make in France, and various places. Even throughout Southeast Asia, there's blood pudding cakes. So this is black koji rice with chicken and some dried fruit, and it's just very, very wonderful. And the citric acid really heightens the dried fruit in there, and it tastes very lovely. This is some meat that we grow koji on. So sometimes we grow the koji on it, and then we hang it to dry like charcuterie. And then other times we grow the mold on the meat, and then we cook the meat. And this is a really fun process, because in this steak here, which has had koji growing on it for about 30 hours, 36 hours, it has a very similar taste to dry aged beef that's 30 days old. So we can replicate a very intensive, expensive product in a much shorter period of time. And here's more. There's every food you see on this board, from the cheese to the pickles to all the meats, these are all made with koji. And these are all things that we serve all the time. And look at this, Koichi-san enjoying some Kenny fried chicken sandwich and some of the koji foods.
That's my favorite.
That's your favorite, that is. And even cheese. This is a local cheesemaker, Yellow House Cheese, just a little bit, about a 30-minute drive south of my restaurant. And this is a cheese this is not brie mold on the outside. This is koji growing on there. And it gives the cheese a very different flavor than the traditional molds used. So a lot of that's still being developed and worked on, but some of them are coming out fantastic. And very different how people grow koji in other parts of the world. This is how we grow in America in some places. This is a dehydrator cabinet with metal trays and plastic tubs, and we can hold the temperature and grow them in there. And I know we're always tight on time. Couple more here. So this is for making something like shochu, so like a soy sauce, but this is all our leftover bread. And eventually this whole container gets filled and becomes one big cake of koji breadcrumbs from rye bread. And then we add salt water to it and make a sauce. So we make products very similar to miso out of bacon and out of caviar. So the eggs and the sperm sacs from fish, we take and we add koji and salt, and we get these wonderful, wonderful foods that we use. We even use them in breads and desserts and pastries. And then some of the products we make, this is made from insects in koji. Every 17 years where I live, this insect comes out in great numbers, and we harvest a lot of it, and it makes just wonderful, wonderful shrimp tasting foods. And we also make vinegars, and we make all sorts of different types of miso-like foods and soy sauce-like foods all the time. And most of these involve using koji.
Excellent. Jeremy, that's brilliant. and I love, I'm glad that before you started doing that, you actually did touch on sort of the agriculture point and sort of the seasonality of it, because in a way, the idea of using or thinking of koji almost as sort of an agricultural product is actually something you source, and tying that into that seasonal nature. In a way, it's actually, looking at Japan and Japanese cuisine, there's a lot of affinity there as well too. If you look at the way that things have been traditionally pickled and things in Japan, all those things they're super hyper local to those seasons, not like, you know, across 3 or 4 month season, but across like 2-week seasons, you know, and that's how a lot of people pickled things here. But koji didn't necessarily, in a lot of different ways, make it, you know, into that. There were, you know, other tools and resources and rice brands and, you know, nukadokos and things like that. But then, so now it's sort of but then by taking something like koji that's so deeply ingrained in, you know, kind of our conversation today, say like the brewing, you know, industry, it didn't quite make that leap. But at the same time, when I look at what you're doing, it has an amazing affinity for just the approach to food and cuisine and people's, you know, living with food, that's been here for a long time. So it feels like like a really natural extension of kind of things that were already happening here for hundreds of years.
Yeah, I'm glad you say that, because like as we worked with these foods and as we developed our use of koji here, it was very natural for us. And I think the only difference is between myself and Koichi and yourself, you know, people in different parts of the world, is we all view the ingredients we have to work with and our society at large with just a different set of glasses on.
Yeah.
So when you leave everything else the same, the affinity for seasonality, working with local product, and then the love of working with koji, and you just put on a different frame of glasses, you end up with all these wonderful different things that people across the world can do.
Yeah, it's a universal playing field that everybody's sort of sharing, right? We're on this shared foundation, right?
Yes.
That's really universal there. Absolutely. And so, with Higuchi-san, you know, obviously, so you look at the things that, say, Jeremy's doing with all these amazing creations. That's a very new approach, clearly. You know, that's something that, as you said, up until 2016, you just wasn't even, you know, you couldn't even fathom that was even a possibility. I'm curious, just kind of stepping back a little bit, you know, koji has obviously been around, you know, integral to the food culture here in Japan for so long. Were there any, you know, it's almost taken for granted in a way that it's just there. You know, these things like sake, miso, shochu, it's almost a given. People don't even think about it. It's so just ingrained there. And in a way, it kind of undervalues the work that you guys are doing a little bit, I think, too. But has there been any events in Japan that have sort of shifted people's awareness around koji or how it can be used? Maybe not to the degree that maybe what Jeremy's doing, but sort of how is the application and the use of koji? You know, were there any turning points or anything historically or things that have happened that really sort of changed your approach and, you know, what koji can be used for here in Japan?
Actually, I don't know the whole history of koji, but as far as I think is the biggest turning point was 2010 or 2011. That year is salted koji year.
Okay,
so,
yeah.
The koji-ya Honten in Oita Prefecture in Japan has launched their salted koji and cookbook as well. That was very impressive historical moment in this society. Until 2010 and 2011, whenever the people ask me my father's job, it was very hard to describe because very few people know about the koji, the title of the koji. But after the Shio Koji showed up, we can very talk about our business smoothly.
Yeah.
And after the few years, the amazake is getting popular in Japanese market. Yeah. It was 2013 and 2014. And in addition, there is a very interesting manga in Japan. The title is Moyashimon.
Yeah.
So our company name is Higuchi Matsunosuke Shoten, but our brand name is Higuchi Moyashi. So in other way to say our business, we are Moyashi company. So Moyashimon means the guy who work at Moyashi's company, and he is actually the university student. But that manga is very interesting. But that manga doesn't describe about the job of our work, but that describe about the many kinds of microorganisms and the school days. It's very interesting. But anyway, Moyashimon helps us to describe our business. And then 2016 is very second biggest turning point because Jeremy Manskisons appeared.
Yeah, yeah. I remember just even for me personally, 10, 12 years ago when all of a sudden the dots kind of connected that all these things that were integral to the things that were kind of supporting my livelihood here, where it was miso or sake or whatever, that through line was koji. And I remember it was kind of right on the cusp of when you're talking about the salted koji or the shio koji, and what Myoho-san and them down at Koji-ya Hometen, when they were really doing that. It was, when you started looking for even information in Japanese on koji, there was nothing. And it was really, really hard. And now, like, as you said, probably even a lot of people in Japan, even if they don't understand koji, you can say shio koji, or you can at least say amazake to somebody, and that means something to them. Whether you understand koji or not, it means something to them. But even 8, 10 years ago, that wasn't even the case. It's just sort of, like I said, it was sort of taken for granted in a way, that it was something here, just been kind of held behind the scenes, but is such a foundation for everything that was happening in the food culture here. Jeremy, I'm sort of, before, in Japan, it's got all these roots and all these traditions here that arguably are kind of lost on a lot of people. And you've really taken those and tried, really are redefining what that looks like, what that could look like. But before you were kind of getting into exploring, and when you were kind of first getting started, what were kind of your initial reference points, or sort of, what inspired you for that sort of exploration? Where did you go? What was that hook?
Yeah, I was very fortunate. I grew up, just in terms of being inspired as a cook. My grandmother was a caterer for kosher foods here in Cleveland. So at a very young age, I was always very interested in cuisine and cooking and food, and especially how people enjoyed the food. At a young age, seeing, being 13, 14 years old, seeing something that I made in my grandmother's kitchen for an event, and then putting it on a table and seeing a couple hundred people go and eat it and enjoy it was the biggest thrill in the world. So, it all kind of started there. But going forward, I think, in working with Koji specifically, it is such a wonderful and beautiful organism. It itself, how it grows, how it smells, how it tastes, and then all of the wonderful unlimited possibilities it gives us, not just in food, but I know at least here in the United States, since the 1980s, different types of laundry detergent and soaps, they've used Koji's enzymes in them to create these more environmentally friendly and biodegradable cleaners. Space agencies now are looking at taking Koji to Mars and to the moon to help create, foods for astronauts, because you can go up with a little packet of spores and it doesn't weigh very much. And then you could grow it on something and end up with a lot more of something that doesn't really need the same type of circumstance or environment that, say, growing wheat or, a tomato plant or something on another planet would need. Yeah. So there's really, when I say unlimited possibilities like that, I'm so intrigued by that. You can do anything that you want when it comes to Koji. If you can dream it up and think that it's delicious and that you would enjoy it, and that hopefully at least one other person enjoys it too, it's worth doing it. And just that potential that koji gives us is fantastic. I mean, me as an outsider looking into Japan and, you know, even some of the other cultures in Asia that use koji, the way I look at it is Asia and Southeast Asia, the most people in the whole world live there. There's more people that live there than the rest of the world. So more people are aware of maybe not koji itself, but the foods made with it, the soy sauces, the alcohols, the sake, the miso. They know those foods than people that don't know those foods. So I feel in some regards that myself and other chefs in the West, we're going really fast to catch up because we're at least a few hundred years late, if not a few thousand at this point.
Yeah, I imagine, Higuchi-san, I imagine, you know, when you first visited Larder, that was probably a bit of a shock. You probably also didn't imagine the idea of, you know, koji going to the moon at that point either. But I'm curious, you know, as sort of the access to koji starts to, right now it's sort of expanding, it's starting to diversify. You know, how do you interpret that potential, and sort of where are you feeling that there's different areas for possibility from your end as a supplier and as a producer?
That is good question, Justin. When I visited in Jeremy-san's place and he served many foods for me, mostly Japanese people has very conservative mind for koji because we can access only miso, soy sauce, and this kind of koji fermented food in Japan. And these has sort of similar flavor. How do you think about Justin about it? We have a conservative mind, right?
Yes, I can say yes. I was like, I don't know if conservative is the right word, but it's locked into a very specific. It's very siloed off into very specific applications.
Surprisingly, Jeremy-san's cuisine has no these kind of flavors, but all of them are used with koji.
Yeah.
But I can say his foods are very fantastic because it has rich umami. And recently, we, as I told you, we have we received many inquiries from international customers, and most of them are miso manufacturer or talented chef or personal koji enthusiasts, and sometimes the sake breweries. And interestingly, whenever I receive the inquiries from them, I ask the job title and the purpose of koji using to avoid spreading to our koji starter to third party.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this works as marketing for us. And I usually hear the job title, the fermenter.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting job title for me because there is no words in Japan. If I translate to Japanese, it is like hakoka.
Yeah.
I have never heard that job title in Japan.
Yeah.
And they are making miso or amino paste with koji. And an interesting guy from Australia visited in our place last year, and he brought his samples, and he gave me, and I tasted that. They are looking as miso, but the taste was very interesting because it has very cheesy flavor. But it's not contaminated for sure. But it had cheesy flavor. Japanese will never think about this. So the big influence is, in most of the case, big influences come from the overseas. So the US and the European market is very interesting. It will be very interesting more in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because I mean, that's sort of how, in a way, food culture evolves, right? If you look back over hundreds or thousands of years, as people have moved and shared different things and shared knowledge. That's how, you know, even the things that we interpret as being very traditional, it's through the influence of, you know, a lot of other people and places and cultures. And so, Jeremy, I'm curious then, so, you know, given where you're at, so say with Larder, you know, you're a Jewish deli, you're the integration of koji into, you know, you already have something that's very ingrained, you know, in its own culture and its own style. You know, how in your offerings, they really exemplify, you know, kind of how people's cultures and have sort of evolved, and in there's a lot of sharing of that knowledge. Sort of how do you view your role, you know, sort of in the culture of food and in as a place, and, you know, what kind of has you excited for the future?
Oh, wow. That's put me on the spot. That's a tough question. You know, my personal, my individual role,
Yeah.
I feel so blessed to be able to do what I want to do. I know many people in life that what they do for their job is not their life. You know, that they dreamed or wished they would be something else in life, but what they do works for them, and then they have a life outside of that. And me, it's all one and the same. My fun and my play is my work. And I consider myself extremely fortunate and blessed for that. You know, my goal is to just keep pushing, keep making, keep getting people hooked on koji, because I'm so in love with it. I want to spread that love, and I want other people to be able to enjoy it. I want not just other chefs to be able to use it and create it, but anybody at home should be using this. I honestly feel that within the next 10 years, now we already have, you know, there's already a product that worldwide almost every household has at least a little bit of, and that's soy sauce.
Yeah.
Whether you have it from a Japanese company or a Chinese company or a company that makes it in your country, it is everywhere. Whether you have a little packet or a big bottle of it, almost every household across the planet uses it. So I feel in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see more koji products, and koji itself make more of an appearance in home kitchens. And that there, I think, is the big push, is getting home cooks and just everyday people to realize that this isn't the province of people with special skill sets that, you know, work all day making delicious food. You too, in your home, can do the same thing and have the same enjoyment. And I think once we start to see more of that happen, we'll hopefully see a lot more stability too in the market for everything koji, from spores to awamori. I think people will become intrigued and be like, wow, I can get this and I can make it too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good point. It's one thing, you know, they talk a lot about how, you know, sake or shochu is kind of one of the reasons we're doing this, is that it just isn't recognized, and that, you know, a lot of those producers are struggling to find ways to sustain themselves. And there's one is, you know, selling the liquid, consuming the liquid, which of course is, you know, a fantastic experience in and of itself, and something, obviously, that's, you know, that's why we're here. But on a really foundational level, the base, that in this case, koji, really has to be valued and appreciated. So finding ways to get people to consume more koji could be not only the fastest route, but also the most stable in a way, because you're building a really solid foundation on something that's rooted and anchored in something really, really, really powerful.
I think that in itself is interesting too, because here in America, craft beer and cider are very big. The movements around them are very big.
Yeah.
And you have lots of what they call microbreweries who make these very, very stylized, hyper-local alcoholic beverages based on the ingredients and the seasons they have. And you have a lot of people who really follow them also make their own beer at home or their own wine. Yet they still go to the microbreweries because it's this whole give and take culture that has surrounded it. And I really think within the next 10 years, we'll start to see much more of that in the koji world. People will say, oh, I can make miso at home, and this is the one I made and it's really special, but I don't want to use it all the time. I want to use it when I have a nice family dinner or some friends over, that sort of thing. for my everyday, let me go support this company out there that's making it too. So I feel very strongly that as more people use it at home, they'll also support the greater community.
Can I comment a little about this?
Yeah, please do.
So as a koji startup manufacturer, the koji should be more diverse in the future. But the big difference between the beer brewing and the soy sauce brewing and the sake brewing is the koji is solid state fermentation. The yeast is liquid state fermentation. The solid state fermentation koji is more sensitive compared to yeast and lactic acid bacteria's fermentation. So if people want to do with the unique materials like lentils and chickpeas, they are unusual material of koji fermentation. So safety and stability must be secured.
Yeah.
So dealing microorganism is very, very sensitive.
Absolutely.
So please note it.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
And I agree with that 100%. Like food safety, understanding what can go wrong, and also learning about the processes to make sure you don't make mistakes and things don't go wrong. For both myself and Koichi-san, that's the number one thing all the time. And that's why too, in the book that I helped write, we say, do not grow your own koji spores. Just don't do it. There are people dedicated to this. They can be contaminated both very dangerously and also disgusting taste-wise. Yeah. So, let the people that do this and do it well and do it regulated with food safety controls do it. And then you can have your fun within reason, within certain food safety controls, and create almost anything you'd like in a safe manner.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that goes back, the fact that, Higuchi-san with your company, you've been doing this for 100+ years. You've developed the ability to do that. And what you offer to people who are looking to utilize those resources is so incredibly valuable, right? And it's because you've been able to cultivate that knowledge and that skill over so much time. They were able to have these really, thoughtful and amazing applications. I'm curious, we're kind of running down on time a little bit, but because, Higuchi-san, because you are able to, create such consistent quality products, safe products in the environment that you do, are there any experiments or is there anything that you're working toward, or are there any new projects or anything that, that's kind of unique to, your relationship with Koji that you're working on?
Our latest unique project is Egg Koji project. So, Egg. So excellent. We are working with QP. This is the Japanese, the biggest mayo manufacturer, and they are consuming 8% of total egg consumption in Japan, and they have been thinking about how induce umami from egg. And they try to contact us to improve the egg ability. And they have many kinds of egg materials, and we fermented egg. But that experiment was so hard because egg has very rich nutrient. So that means it's very easy to contaminate it. So finally, we succeeded to ferment egg without any contamination. And finally, they made aged egg yolk. That is like a hollandaise sauce. And they are adding for many kinds of food products like pasta sauce and dressings. And in the future, they will use more many kinds of foods. This is very interesting project.
That's incredible, and that's something that your role specifically that you're able to do. That should come with a big sign. Do not try this at home.
We selected the best strain for this project. We have thousands of stocks in our company.
That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. We're kind of winding down. We're going to have to check out here pretty quickly. you know, the world is in kind of a wild place. There are a lot of challenges right now. Jeremy, is there any last words, anything you want to share with anybody before we check out, or anything you want to tell them about, you know, the restaurant or how people can support you?
Well, you know, I think overall is the message is to support Koji.
Yeah.
You know, look up Koichi-san and get some spores and buy them from him. Find your favorite local sake maker or your awamora producer and buy their product and enjoy it. Find a miso producer you love. You know, support them through as much as you can. That's the most important thing right now. You know, I'm sure Koichi has better numbers than I do, but right now I think there's 6 or just 7 Koji spore producers left in Japan, and one time there was hundreds. You know, it just goes to show if something isn't supported, we could lose it. And Koichi's job right now is so important because when you support him, he then invests in the biodiversity of Koji. As he said, they have thousands in their stockpile of things that do different things, or very specialized Kojis. And he can preserve that for future generations. And he can help chefs like me or companies like QP find something very specific for a very specific task we're looking to do. And it's great that him and his family are out there being able to do that. So supporting him and supporting the people that grow Koji from his spores and make fantastic products is what you do. Drink more sake.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's tough to travel right now, but yeah, as you're camped out at home, you know, and everybody's possibly got a little bit more time, spend that little extra time and, you know, go out, you know, find something that you like and, you know, integrate that into your day to day. And hopefully as a result, then everybody wins. Higuchi-san, Jeremy, thank you so much for making time this afternoon, this evening. That was absolutely wonderful, super inspiring and insightful. And I can't wait to be in the same space with you guys in the near future, just diving into heaps of Koji in some form or another.
Yes.
It was an eye-opener, Jeremy. Really, it really was.
Thank you.
Excellent. And Higuchi-san, thank you so much. Hopefully we'll cross paths here in Japan here very soon.
Thank you.
It was an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.